Just recently, Paul Pierce had the perfect send-off for his last game in the TD Garden as he hit a three-pointer over Isaiah Thomas with about 5 seconds left. And isn't it fitting that Pierce, a guy who is so known for his performances in the clutch for the Celtics over the years, would have his last shot be in the late fourth quarter. Paul Pierce, one of the best players in the history of the Celtics, second all-time in scoring behind John Havlicek, 16th all-time in NBA scoring overall. But we're going to be focusing on just his days in Boston here. And he had a lot of great moments, and we're going to try to narrow it down to 5. And there are some that are simply not going to make it in here, whether it be a myriad of buzzer beaters, one against the Miami Heat, another against the New York Knicks come to mind, the comeback in the fourth quarter against the New Jersey Nets, the upset in round 1 over the Indiana Pacers, including the shot over Al Harrington. Many great moments, but we can only have 5. So Paul Pierce's top 5 moments as a Boston Celtic. And we are going to start in 2008, the first year of the Big Three, where the Celtics would run through the Eastern Conference to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would meet the Detroit Pistons, a team still holding on, a team still full of very good players. Rasheed Wallace, still a force on the low block, and Richard Hamilton, one of the best mid-range shooters the game has ever seen. You saw Chauncey Billups earlier. And of course, there was my dad's favorite player, Tayshaun Prince, whose wingspan and defense always created a headache. Many people believed that the Eastern Conference was ultimately going to come down to these two teams, as it did, and Detroit was actually the only team in the entire postseason who handed the Celtics a loss in Boston. So they definitely had their hands full, and while these two teams were battling it out, the Celtics managed to secure a 3-2 lead, a Game 6 in Detroit. They needed a big game, and Paul Pierce definitely showed up for this one, a chance to eliminate the Pistons and head to the NBA Finals. And Pierce had his normal bag of tricks on display. His creativity and his craftiness within the three-point line was always something to marvel at. PP34, which is a nickname I hate, was just so damn difficult when it came to stop from the mid-range and in. But the Pistons, being a damn good team in their own right, kept themselves in this one, and they actually gave the Celtics a bit of a scare in this because they had about a 7-point lead going into the fourth quarter. It seemed for a moment that this was actually going to be heading back to Boston for a Game 7, but Pierce was not about that life, as he would finish with 12 points in the fourth quarter, 27 overall for the game, and just in the fourth, he got his James Harden on and he made 8 free throws to put the Pistons away. And of course, other guys contributed as well. Kevin Garnett, 16 points. Ray Allen, 17 points, including 3 threes. The Celtics would defeat the Pistons in that Game 6, and they would head on to the NBA Finals. But Paul Pierce, an elimination game, 27 points, with 10 free throw makes. There was no way he was giving the Pistons a chance to take this back to Boston. Now for number 4, we are going to head to the first round of 2012 against the Atlanta Hawks, who did not have this court design, but unfortunately I can't do anything about it, so just forget that it's there for a moment. Atlanta beat up the Celtics pretty damn well in Game 1, as they just seemed more athletic, and it seemed like the C's may have finally hit their wall after appearing in 2 NBA Finals and capturing one of them. But it also didn't help that Rajon Rondo got ejected at the end of this game for getting into it with a referee. So now the Celtics without their star point guard, but just to make things even a little tougher, just to stack the deck more against them, Ray Allen was missing the early part of this series due to an injury. So, down 1-0, no Ray Allen, no Rajon Rondo, second-year player Avery Bradley playing over 40 minutes a game. How the hell do the Celtics manage to tie this thing up? Well, this is where Paul Pierce had one of his biggest FU performances, if you will. The mid-range game was automatic for him early on in this one. The moment it started, you could see the urgency within Pierce where he said, I have to make my mark on this game very early on, and I have to hold that up for the entire game, and he was able to do so. The Atlanta Hawks not having a player who could really defend Pierce one-on-one, whether it ended up with Josh Smith, Marvin Williams, Joe Johnson, whoever was on him, he was making it on this night against Atlanta. But all that being said, the Hawks were still favored to win this one, and they were a talented team even if Al Horford was still injured. So they would go on a run of their own towards the late third quarter as well as the beginning of the fourth quarter, to where all the theatrics that Pierce was pulling out in the first half, it might not have mattered anyway. We had a tie game at 70-all with about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then Pierce would go on one of the best runs that you could ever find. First, he beat his man for a layup on the left-hand side of the basket, and then in transition, he threw down a thunderous dunk, and you can definitely hear it within the arena because of the scream that he let out as he attacked the rim. And then there was the big one. As he went up in transition, Atlanta was a step too slow defending the three-point line, and a huge dagger that would give the C's a 7-point lead, and it ripped the heart out of the Hawks. Pierce would finish the game with 36 points, no Rajon Rondo, no Ray Allen, everyone counting the team out, and then the truth showed up, and we can't forget the Tebow pose that would sum up the whole moment. The Celtics would go on to beat the Sixers in round 2, and that would lead us into the conference finals against the Miami Heat, as this is one of the most memorable playoff series that I can think of in recent time in the NBA. The big three of Miami, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, who was injured at times in this series, would manage to take Game 1. Game 2 featured perhaps the Rajon Rondo's best performance, as he put up 44 points and nearly a triple-double, as it seemed the C's were going to tie this thing up at 1-all, but the talent of Miami would run through the Celtics in the end, as they would take a 2-0 series lead going back to Boston. But this Celtics team was one to never quit, as they would win both games 3 and 4 in front of the Celtic green, and suddenly, these guys had a real chance to give the Miami Heat their second straight loss in the postseason, and perhaps ruin the whole Big Three experiment altogether. So in Game 5 in Miami, there was a lot riding on this one. I mean, this was at the peak of Skip Bayless hating on LeBron, so this was a pretty big deal. A back-and-forth game all the way throughout. Chris Bosh being able to contribute on the second unit for Miami, definitely making a difference, even if he looks really goofy in 2K. And while the Celtics were overmatched from a talent standpoint, they had key performances from Kevin Garnett with 26 points and 11 rebounds, as well as Michael Petrus with 13 points off the bench. But even so, those damn Miami Heat. Dwayne Wade still at his peak at this point. Almost impossible to deal with both him as well as LeBron James. But still, the Celtics had a 1-point lead with about a minute left to go in this one. And it came down to Paul Pierce sizing up LeBron James on the left-hand side of the floor, and James doing all he could with the contest, could only watch as Pierce would rise up and nail a three-pointer to give the Celtics a 4-point lead, and he put the entire basketball world against LeBron James and the Miami Heat, because when the series began, no one gave the Celtics a chance. When they were down 2-0, those beliefs were only amplified, but then with a 2-game winning streak and this huge shot right here, everyone was asking LeBron in Miami, what do you guys got? Now, of course, they turned around and James had one of the best performances in the history of the NBA, as he would score 45 points in Game 6, and then Miami would ultimately win this thing in 7 games. But still, the moment for Pierce, potentially the best player in the game staring him in the face, and the only thing he had to say was, he can't guard me. Now don't forget about LeBron James just yet, because as we go back to the 2008 season, the second round of the playoffs, the Celtics could not figure out the Cavaliers when they were in Cleveland at all. Sure, they would give them some close games, but the Quicken Loans Arena was too damn energetic, LeBron James was too good, and his ability to carry the set of role players he had around them, and be a real force against the Celtics was pretty damn incredible, as he also had one of the biggest dunks in the history of the playoffs, which doesn't entirely look like how it is in the footage, but don't worry about it, it's cool. He managed to push these Cavaliers to a Game 7 against the Celtics in Boston, as the NBA would see one of its best duels of all time. LeBron James recently said that if he ever had a rival, it would probably be Paul Pierce, for the way that he has pushed him and the way that those two would often go at each other. And this game was really the peak of that whole internal rivalry that these two had, as it was a back and forth affair. Pierce oftentimes going to his signature mid-range game to score on the Cavaliers, but LeBron, with elite athleticism and being impossible to stay in front of, would go right back at Pierce. And it was, if whatever you can do, I can do better, as these two would finish with ridiculous scoring totals on the day. LeBron James with 45 points, Paul Pierce with 41. And Kevin Garnett even said after this game was over, the game plan for tonight was give the ball to Paul Pierce and get the hell out of the way. The amount of pull-up jumpers that he hit in this game is enough for normal players' entire careers. However, LeBron James made this very interesting, a set of outside shots to keep the Celtics honest in the fourth quarter, on top of a steal of Paul Pierce at around half court to put this at a 1-point game with not much time left in it. Celtics fans were gasping for just something. There was no way that this 66-win Big Three was going to go down to the Cavaliers in round 2. But a huge shot by P.J. Brown, shout out to him, kept the C's alive, and then a set of free throws by Pierce would put the Cavaliers away. But still, an all-time performance by LeBron James, countered by an all-time performance by Paul Pierce. Let's get to number 1 here. And it's the 2008 NBA Finals, which I assume you're not surprised by, as Kobe Bryant, who doesn't entirely look like himself because it's a created roster. Just don't look at his face too much and it's going to be okay. His Lakers, which was comprised of Lamar Odom, Derek Fisher, as well as Pau Gasol, ran through the Western Conference as they found themselves in the finals against Paul Pierce and the Boston Celtics, which I'm sure you also saw coming. In Game 1, Pierce wasted no time making his imprint on this series. 22 points, while also shooting 7 for 10 from the field, as the Celtics would take a 1-0 lead. But then in Game 2, he got his point guard on a bit more, as he would acquire 8 assists, as the C's would take a 2-0 lead in this series. I remember Doc Rivers specifically saying, "We haven't done anything yet besides win 2 home games," but they were definitely kicking the Lakers' ass up to this point. Job was, of course, not done yet, and in case you forgot about Kobe Bryant, which I assume you did not, he was a big deal, and he was still the driving force of this Lakers team, and the Celtics were going to have to go through him if they wanted to win this thing. And as they were going back to LA, Paul Pierce was going to have to do something that he wasn't always known for, as in Game 3, Kobe Bryant would score over 30 points to make it a 2-1 series. And then there was the infamous Game 4, where it was going really damn ugly for the Celtics, as they were down like 20 plus points. I mean, look how sad the bench is. But a key for this team, as a running thing with them, they just didn't go down like Tom Brady a week ago, or whatever it was. They would storm back from the 24-point deficit and actually make a game of it. It was a total team effort. Shout out to James Posey, who's not in the video. Pierce, offensively, would put up 20 points and 7 assists in this comeback. But what he really did was defend Kobe Bryant. As Doc Rivers said at some point in this, just frickin' stop the guy, which is a ridiculous thing to ask someone. But for the game, Kobe Bryant would shoot 6 for 19 from the field, 17 points overall, and a huge part of that was Paul Pierce. There's a video on YouTube of Paul Pierce's defense on Kobe in this Game 4. That was a huge reason for it, as they would come back and win it to go up 3-1, For the series overall, Pierce would average 22 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting nearly 10 free throws a game as he would capture Finals MVP, and he would deliver the Celtics their first championship in quite a while. Paul Pierce's top 5 moments as a Boston Celtic. He'll be in the Hall of Fame someday, and his number will definitely be at the ceiling of the TD Garden.